councillors and staff, anyone listening in, and welcome to our visitors. I might just get Leanne to introduce us first of all before we start.
Cool, thank you, through the chair. So good afternoon everyone. I have Derek Olsen and Payman Momonen from Audit New Zealand. Derek is our Director of our audits and I think I've got the titles right, and Payman is the Audit Manager who ran our audit for our annual report last year. Many of you will probably recognise Derek but may not have met Payman in the past because I don't think he was here last year.
Thank you. Just call for apologies. We have two, Councillor Mackel and Councillor Brahm. Would someone like to move we accept those? Councillor Cameron.
I'll second.
Councillor McMillan. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. Any extraordinary business? I know of none. No. Declarations of interest? No. Just before I carry on, we did have the audit report as being in public excluded. If council had a wish to do so, we could bring it into the public part of the meeting. Just feeling around the table.
What's the reasoning for it to be in public excluded? Under what?
We have proposed in the agenda that there are commercial activities referred to in the audit report that would lead us to recommend public excluded, but it's a fair question for councillors to ask. There may be some aspects to that report which includes information that is commercially sensitive, but perhaps not all of it and perhaps not the discussion that should follow.
Murray?
Yeah, I was just going to say in terms of that, I think the overall report, the audit opinion is obviously public ultimately, but if there's things like internal control weaknesses or things like that identified, that opens up for public to potentially see those. So to Hamish's point, I think it's there's no right answer, but I think, you know, it's probably you can't put some things in and some things out, so it's all or nothing, and to that point of commercial vulnerability, I think it's worth considering.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron?
I support most things going in public, not public excluded, unless obviously there's some real vulnerabilities there which I didn't identify, but I probably wouldn't know what I'm looking for. I'd support it to be in public.
Thank you. I am going to ask for a show of hands. If those who want it left in public excluded could please raise a hand. And those who want it taken out and into the open meeting. Oops, can we, because some people didn't put a hand up at all then, so. Committee, so we're going into open meeting. Thank you. Right, we shall carry on with the first part and then I will ask you to come forward and do your presentation. Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes of the 10th of May. Someone, thank you. Councillor Cameron.
I'd like to move those, please.
Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Wilson. Any discussion or debate? Put that. All those in favour? Thank you. Okay, item 5, terms of reference. Any questions? Councillor Cameron?
When we had this discussion, which I think was last week or the week before, about putting, for example, the EA Networks information in for a more rigorous sort of examination in Audit and Risk, we also discussed other aspects of the financial material. Will that come in as we go along? I'm just thinking about the terms of reference.
Through Mr. Chairman, no. We were responding to Council's stated desire to have a closer examination of the EA Network Centre by the Audit and Risk Committee. We're not aware that there was a broader desire from the majority of councillors to expand that. So this only reflects the EA Network Centre.
can I say something else?
Yes.
Their main, I'm just speaking probably out of turn, but I understood we were looking at, we had a general broad ranging discussion, but I agree with you, Hamish, I don't know that we moved anything. But we did discuss possibility of one day, if we're looking at an investment strategy, that would come into this forum as well, and other financial strategies might as well.
And it might.
Yeah.
At the moment, those things belong to council, by council's decision to have the bulk of financial reporting directly to council, not to the audit and risk.
Yeah.
So until council was to address that and make a more proactive change, this change is only about the EA Network
Okay.
Centre.
So if we did want, so the terms of reference are only are specific, and they're only referring to the EA networks.
Correct.
So if it was at council and there was something that we wanted to expand on in a more deliberate fashion, and we thought this committee would be the place to do so, we have to move it separately and say, can we take that to the audit and risk for review?
If through you, Mr. Chair, if it involves financials.
Yes.
So the proactive decision of council was because council itself meets fortnightly, everyone's on it, they wanted to
Yes.
have the financial overview of the council operation, not audit and risk.
Okay.
And this is where we take more in-depth audits and consider risk matters. But financials belong to the full council meeting. If you wanted to refer something financial to this committee, just as you have decided with the EA Network Centre, then you would need to vary the terms of reference again to achieve that outcome.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor.
Thinking along the same lines as Councillor Cameron, there's the sphere of business there with all those bullet points. We could add another bullet point on the end which said, and any other matters directed to this committee by council, which would cover whatever which we don't know about now but could be thought about in the future, which is not dealt with at council, but it could be sent here.
Could be a risk matter as opposed to a financial one as well.
And we don't know what they are yet, so it's just any other matters directed to the committee by council.
Are you moving that, Mr Mayor?
So I'd just look for direction.
Through Mr. Chairman, yes, you would need to move something. We've got a varied terms of reference here for your moving, seconding and ultimate adoption or amendment. So if you wish to further amend it, then I think it should be via a resolution for those who are on the Audit and Risk Committee. And that, remembering that then is only a recommendation to council.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're going to amend it, I'll move it, I'd second it.
Well, at the moment we don't have a motion, so just a recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will be the recommendation if we get a move and a seconder for it. But this is in the terms of reference. I'm sure we just can add terms of reference in that we want, but without having to move and second it, because it'll drop into the bigger motion.
Oh, so you today want to add that to the terms of reference and then move the other
Correct.
part, which will then
the
include
last
that.
bullet point under the one at yellow, to receive the EA networks. The next bullet point, and any other matters directed to the committee by council. If we add that on, then we can go back to the
Original
recommendation.
motion and it's fine.
That'll work.
It'll work. There's no,
That'll be a recommendation to council.
Council,
We'll ensure that the amended terms of reference are included in the council agenda with these minutes, and you'll adopt them or not at the council meeting.
so those members of the Audit and Risk Committee are happy that that's added to the, yeah, it's very warm in here suddenly. And I don't think it's us. Are happy for that to be added to that as another bullet point? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we'll do that and then we'll go back to the recommendation.
I'll move.
Thank you. Any questions? Debate? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. Right. Whew, yeah, it is very hot. Okay, gentlemen, would you like to? No, yes, it's not. Yep. Come forward. Welcome. Thank you. And as you've now been informed, we are live, so.
Thank you,
The
Chair.
floor is yours.
Afternoon, committee members, management. Again, as always, a privilege to be able to present our report for the year. This is the report for the 30 June 2022 financial year end. Looking at the date, it's 1 week before the next financial year end. So I'm sure management have been working quite hard on some of the recommendations that we've made in this report to be ready for this year's audit that will also be kicking off quite soon already. Again, I would take the report as read, but there are some items that I would like to highlight that just depicts the audit and the areas that we did find, and as a result made some recommendations on our findings. Again, as you are aware, last year was the second year that we had extended reporting deadlines, extended deadline also for the audit, and as such we issued our audit opinion on the 21st of December, just in time before Christmas. So we met the legislative deadline, which was the end of December. So at least everybody could take a well-deserved break after I would characterize as an exhausting period and an exhausting audit, which also made it complicated by the fact that I was overseas auditing remotely for a period of time. But again, maybe just from my side to express my sincere gratitude and thanks to management for their cooperation during this time, and a lot of issues that we had to work through during a pressurized time frame, which I think was dealt with appropriately. The key focus for this year's audit, as we identified in our audit plan, was around the revaluation. We did see indicators in the market that we were expecting quite material increases within infrastructure assets. This was post-COVID, seeing increases in cost indices and just factors within the market that had impacted the unit rates that is used to build up the cost of your underlying assets, that being eroding, your three waters and other infrastructural assets. So a big part of the audit was around that aspect of just ensuring that the valuations that were performed, those valuations were performed in-house and also peer reviewed by external experts. So we did engage with your valuers as well as the peer reviewers to gain comfort around their objectivity and independence and expertise, but also then looking at the assumptions and judgments that were contained in those reports to ensure that they are reasonable and meet the requirements of the applicable valuation and accounting standards. You would see from the report that there were quite material uplifts as expected within those different areas, most specifically around roading 57 million and drinking water around 24 million, which is quite material in the context of the accounts of the council. And as I said, to be expected, so it was required that those be adjusted within the financial statements to reflect the fair value of such. Also, we did identify some areas during our audit, and maybe just to highlight one or two of those areas, specifically around your investments in other entities, so investment in your joint venture and investment in associates, RDRML Limited, as well as Eastfield's joint venture. We did scrutinize the accounting treatment for that and realized that it wasn't treated in line with the relevant accounting standards, and made some recommendations for that to be treated appropriately. From an auditing perspective, we were still able to gain comfort for the value that was included in the financial statements. Also, maybe to note that we did have some challenges around receivables and payables this year. Probably an area that under normal circumstances we wouldn't have expected to be challenging, but there were some challenges from reports extracted from the system, and just how we gain comfort and reliance on those reports. But again, after discussions with management, I think we've got a way forward for next year's audit. So there are some recommendations around internal controls and how of the issues that we've identified, and I think management's already in the process of correcting those. So I think in total we raised an additional 8 new recommendations for this year. 3 of them urgent, as I've highlighted some of them already, 3 of them necessary, which means that you've got a 12-month time frame to correct them, and then also 2 that's beneficial, just ensure that you tighten up any loose internal controls within the environment that might exist. There's also some good progress in terms of prior year recommendations that we've been able to close off for this year, but still a few open recommendations that need some attention, specifically maybe around the IT environment. Also, this was going forward, we'll be looking at ISO 315, which is an auditing standard that also became applicable for us for this year. So a lot more focus within the IT control environment, and a lot more emphasis that will be placed on that, specifically around your user access controls, how you give people access to the system, and how you ensure that people that leave the organization no longer have access to the system. So that's quite a critical component from an internal controls perspective. Yes, I'll pause there, Chair, and take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No one's diving for their light. Murray's got a question. Thank you.
Derek, it's Murray here. I'm actually in Melbourne, so apologies for not being there. Just a couple of the observations that you've got there that you've got as urgent look to me that it's around preparation of information for audit purposes, which I know is extremely important, but I guess I'm just trying to get a sense for the distinction between getting information ready for audit and the actual controls, and how impactful those control weaknesses are on the business, if that makes sense.
Yes. I mean, I think probably 2 of the critical ones there that's flagged as urgent, the first one being around the fair value of the investment in RML and the investment in the joint venture Eastfields. They might have a material impact on the financial reporting if the investments aren't fair valued and equity accounted for, and that the accounting policies within those financial statements don't line up with the accounting policies within council. That could lead to a material misstatement from a reporting perspective. Yes, maybe from the business perspective, it might not have a material impact, but just from your reporting perspective, they are quite crucial elements that can be materially misstated and lead to a qualified audit opinion. Similarly with the information for receivables and payables.
Yeah, so are you saying that we've got problems with the receivables and payables processes, meaning we've actually got inaccurate information? Or are we saying the reporting to get to the audit conclusions isn't robust enough? Because I guess I just trying to...
Yes, I mean, I think maybe to...
Yeah,
sorry, Murray, to respond to that, I think, yeah, I mean, if we start questioning the accuracy and completeness of the reporting and the reconciliations that's manually prepared, it does question to what extent you as committee members and council can gain comfort from a business perspective that the information, the underlying information is accurate, and whether there's then whether the business process needs improvement.
Yeah, so that's my question in terms of, because if it's the processes themselves and these other 2 recommendations that are not robust enough, that in my mind leads to we haven't got enough depth in terms of capability. If it's more of a kind of reporting thing for audit, obviously we need to get it right to get the numbers right, but I'm just trying to draw a distinction between robust business processes and not having them, if that makes sense. Beneath the actual reporting side of things, the processing of information, the balances of debtors and creditors, the actual cash coming in and leaving sort of stuff. Is that clear?
Yes, no, and I think that's probably why we're raising it, because it's difficult to come to a conclusion whether it's whether it's just the reporting or whether there's something underlying as well.
Okay, well, I think probably it's worth more of a conversation to understand if we've got potentially a bigger problem or not, in terms of capability or depth or enough resource in the team or something.
Thank you,
Is that
Leanne.
it?
Yep, Leanne's just going to have a comment there, Murray.
So through the chair, what we identified was part of it, there was twofold to this. One, the team struggled with the new Tech One's modern system to pull out the reports. But two, while my team had done a in-depth reconciliation, we also identified that the supporting documentation we were supplying was not being used initially by the auditors, and that created confusion as well. So there was a twofold. That being said, we have worked with Tech One and we have a new report that is easy to understand to reconcile. The figures themselves, receivables and payables, were correct. It was the supporting documentation to give audit the assurance was where things got difficult across a number of ways.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That was sort of the guts of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron?
A question around the fixed assets register. Did we undervalue those significantly? Is that what you're getting to?
Maybe we just ask what page are you referring to?
Page 10. Another area we did not receive all the required information was in relation to revalued assets. This included reliable and well-represented reconciliations between the financial statements and the District Council's fixed asset register.
Yes, so we did have a material misstatement. If you look at the corrected misstatement schedule, there was 56, almost 57 million.
Yes, that's right.
That we identified. So the error was that land under roads were not separated out, where in previous years it was. So we did identify that from the valuation report it was missing. So that reconciliation did not tie up.
So through the chair to but I understood we revalued our bridges and our roads and all that. Yeah. Didn't that come to council quite recently? Like about a year ago, or if I made that up? I'm sure we had a revaluation for insurance purposes.
Correct. Insurance purposes are completely different for our stating our fair value of our assets. But what it was we had a roading team and a finance team, and I can't remember which way round it goes. One recognised the collective amount of the assets, including the road under, and the other left the roading off, and so it was represented differently, which is why it didn't reconcile.
Okay. Just as an aside from the audit conversation, and as not a financially, clever person, but I would have thought what we insure our assets for should be what they're valued at for.
No, because the land, we're talking about the land under the road.
Yeah,
okay.
The
don't
road,
insure that.
so the two, yes.
Yeah, okay, so we're insuring the stuff on top of the road, not the land underneath the road. We're assuming that if we have a natural disaster, we can reinstate the fixed asset on top of the land. Essentially, which is actually a big assumption. Yeah, given Hurricane Gabriel and all this shit. Is that right?
There's a whole lot of...
We have some insurance for roading.
Hamish?
There's a whole lot of different concepts being bandied around.
Okay, I'll bow. Righto.
No, it's the land under the road that we were talking about. We don't insure the roads either. You can't insure the road.
No.
So insurance is around things on top of the ground, like bridges perhaps, or houses or whatever. But this was around the value of the land under the road.
That was not included in the fixed asset register for the purposes of the audit.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. There was differing way of it being capitulated, because initially in the prior year it had been separated and this year it had been combined, and so that was where the challenge became. Staff on the teams assumed it to be consistent with last year and it wasn't, and it caused confusion.
Going forward with a new team who now work with this, that will all be fine. Now, Councillor Wilson.
Can you please make comment with regards to the valuation of the two outside investments we have, or three, I thought it was, RDRML, Eastfield, and I'll call it the Canterbury Dump, for a better use of the word. Can you please make a comment on that for us?
I can. So a couple of things. The finance team continued with the way they'd valued and recognised the fair value of the shares for all three as they'd done in many years prior. Having a new audit manager on site recognised that was not the best way. Eastfields, for example, don't revalue their land annually. We, as a commercial, with our investments hat on, have to. And so what we did, and it was quite challenging, particularly for RDRML, because their assets aren't a normal set of assets for revaluation. So what we did was we were able to contact RDRML, and they had just done a revaluation for part of their insurances, so I used that as a starting point and did an assessment. I did the same for Eastfields, where we went to them and looked at their assets and looked at the property and did an assessment, having just done a revaluation on another piece of land. And for, who am I missing, Transwaste, we deemed it not material. So we did our assessments, deemed it not material, agreed with Audit New Zealand on that process to get us through the annual report completed that we're discussing today. Going forward, we are carrying out or Eastfields are doing their own revaluation. Where we struggle is we cannot order any of these three to do their own revaluation. We don't have that level of influence. Eastfields are doing that for us and for themselves. I have worked with RDRML and with Audit New Zealand right at the moment, and they're doing their own revaluation using indices, and we, the finance team, will assess that. And then Transwaste, we're going to have to find an external valuer to do that for us. We have reached out to a couple of the other shareholders, being other councils, to see if they want to go shares in that cost. At this stage, we haven't had the uptake.
Perhaps just make a comment. I understand the reason for it, but it is very disappointing in that it's not adding any value to our district at all from a ratepayer's point of view. They're not assets we'll ever sell. We're not going to sell our dump. So I think it's a pity we're having to do that. It begs belief.
Yeah, and I acknowledge that point, and Derek and Payman will know that was part of the conversation we had at the death of this audit. But what we came to accept was that the accounting standard, our legal obligations to do this were made very clear to us, and so we understand that obligation to make take those steps for future audits. The frustration for us was that it hadn't been required in the past, nor did we see it adding much value to the community's understanding of our business. But that aside, it became clear that our obligation was very clear.
So those other councils that have shares in that asset must be being treated the same way, so they must want that same information that we do.
Well, we don't know what their auditor is requiring of them, just as prior to last year's audit, they weren't requiring it of us. Okay. But if that's just context,
what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further questions, councillors? You're happy there, Murray?
Just agree. It's a complex area, and we're not going to sell our infrastructural assets. So
no.
It's accounting standard driven, and yes, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yep. It is.
I guess the only other thing is, would there be a valuation that all shareholders could agree to for that other asset? I'm not sure. That's because some of those shareholders are private companies, I believe, in Transwaste. I don't know if it's something that the finance function can have a conversation more widely so everyone can agree, but that's the only thought I had.
So through the chair I've reached out, there's there's four in total. Christchurch City Council have a completely different system because of how many, their level of shareholding. Huanui is too tiny, so it's not material to them. Selwyn and Waimak and Ashburton District Council have a very similar treatment, so I've gone to them asking if they want to go a third in the one valuation, and I've had no uptake. And we've reached out through our finance team, and I've reached out through the Canterbury Forum. we have to go ahead and do it because our audit starts, and I'm hoping that those two councils will come to me and say, hey, can we go shares in that? But we have to do it regardless of what they do. Audit New Zealand has made it clear if we don't comply, we will get a modified audit opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
It's to Audit New Zealand. Have you upskilled, or not upskilled, sorry, upstaffed and increased your capability to be able to do our audits on time so that our staff aren't under more pressure, you know, when the pressure's not needed, because they have the pressures outside with government reforms to deal with as well as the audit. So it's in your court to upskill, upsize, probably is the word.
Yes, through you, Chair. We have recruited quite a number of people, also with immigration laws relaxing again. We have been able to recruit a lot of people from overseas as well. So we are confident that we have the numbers to perform the audits, and we've returned back to the normal statutory deadlines. So we've already communicated dates with management, and we believe we will be able to meet those dates and deadlines, and be working towards the normal legislative deadlines of the 30th of October.
And as part of this recruitment drive, do you have procedures and things in place to ensure that they actually understand the council environment and how councils in New Zealand work? They're not just coming in as auditors with it, because that's one of the main problems that you have with a very new person coming in, not understanding, and audit takes a lot of work for everybody to get them up to speed, not so much doing the job they're meant to be doing.
Yes, again, through you, Chair, we do have internal processes in place to ensure that all our people receive the appropriate training and are upskilled to understand the local context and the environment in which we operate.
Thank you. Hamish?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just while we're contemplating the audit program, I wonder, given we're here and we have the benefit of Derek and Payman being here, one of the issues that I know a number of my colleagues are worried about is actually audit of the LTP. And while we acknowledge that the Audit Office has resourced up and that the deadline for the annual report has gone back to the 31st of October, there are some concerns around the capacity of both local government, given the reform agenda that we're trying to grapple with, and then secondly, the Audit Office as to how the LTP will be audited. And I wonder, given we have the pleasure of you here, whether you've got any comments to make, Derek or Payman, in relation to your confidence or otherwise that the LTP audit will flow beautifully at the conclusion of the annual report audit.
Thanks for that question, Amy. Yes, again, through your Chair, again, I'm confident that we will have the necessary numbers in terms of staffing to ensure that we can perform your LTP. We've already got management's time frame in terms of your processes. We are also looking at our own resourcing board, starting to populate that once we've completed all our local government audits, which will be at the end of October. So November onwards, we'll start to look at and resource our resource board for long-term plan audits.
And just to follow that, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I suppose that underlines the importance of that timetable that we have submitted to you being adhered to. And I guess I want to underline that with councillors and exec and finance people in this room, that the timetable that we have committed to will need to be adhered to in order for us to enjoy the timetabling for Audit Office to deliver the audit of the LTP. So we feel pleased with your answer. We also, know that we're in a bit of a straitjacket around that timetable, and that may manifest itself out in decisions we're making or work that we're doing or queries council have at the time they're getting the material. We've really got to stick to that timetable as agreed with the Audit Office, or we risk the LTP not being completed.
Yeah, sorry, if I can maybe also just further expand. I mean, as a local office, we are getting training by the Office of the Auditor General during July, So I think once that has also taken place, we'll be in a much better position in terms of what their expectations are from this audit round, probably also what the focus areas will be. Initial indications are that the focus areas will be very similar to what they were in the previous LTP. But I think we'll be in a much better position once that training has been conducted by the office for us also then to start engaging on critical issues that you will be facing.
Thank you, and thank you for that information. Any further questions? No. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for that report.
Sorry,
Murray. Yes.
I did have just Derek, on the emphasis of meta for the Three Waters program, does that mean every local authority in the country would have received that? Because surely the same environment is there for everyone.
Yes, again, through your chair, Murray, yes, every council did receive that emphasis of matter. The wording of it might have changed or were tweaked a bit depending on when the various audit reports were signed, because there were various stages of the legislation being passed through Parliament, but effectively everybody did receive an emphasis on matter on Three Waters reform.
And going forwards, given we're sort of, and management might be closer to the action than me, but in limbo, or we've been put on pause, or whatever it might be, I'm probably using the wrong language. What does that mean from an audit standpoint for this year, if anything?
So we'll probably still be including an emphasis of matter within the audit report, reflecting the current status of that uncertainty.
And okay. I think Murray, through Mr. Chairman, if there's a Labor-led government, they're committed to the reform. The Water Services entity legislation went into the House last week. So if Labor lead the next government, it'll be very clear what the environment for water will be. If National have publicly stated they will repeal that legislation, but by 31 October, given they won't have formed a government at the very earliest until 15th of October, if they perhaps had a majority, the legislation won't be repealed. So at the reporting date, the environment will be the same as it is now. It's just that there will be uncertainty if the government changes as to whether or not National continues with their election promise.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Been very good.
Thank you, Jim. Maybe just in closing, again, just want to express my thanks to management and looking forward to the audit this year. Again, seeing that we have returned to a normal cycle, I think there is going to be pressure on both sides. To an extent, there was the luxury of having 2 months additional to prepare accounts. Now there's only effectively 1 or 2 months. So, looking forward to both teams cooperating quite well to ensure that we meet that end of October deadline.
Thank you very much. Okay. Councillors, that brings to an end the... Yeah, thank you. Yeah, can do.
I'll move that we receive
The finance report. Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that? Someone? Councillor Wilson, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried, thank you. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
I'll move we move into pay.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Wilson. All those in favour, please say aye. Done, thank you.